Hi everyone! Thank you for joining us. For those of you that are here, welcome. For those of you joining us live on Facebook Live, welcome to this chat. Today we're going to be talking about hidden dangers of mold exposure and possible solutions. My name is Dr. Ramos. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I joined the Restore Medicine team a couple of months ago, and it's been a wonderful journey here. Definitely thank you, Dr. Nicola, for this opportunity, to our wonderful staff, Brenda and Carmen. They've been amazing. So the goal for today's lecture is to try to give everyone a good idea of what mold is, some of the testing that we can do for mold, indoor testing, testing on ourselves, some of the symptoms that a person can experience when they have mold issues or issues detoxifying some of these mycotoxins or neurotoxins, as well as some treatment options. So something that you can start doing, where to start, and some guides to finding the right practitioners that can help you throughout your mold treatment process. I am undergoing the Shoemaker certification. Dr. Shoemaker is the leading doctor. He's very well known for treating patients with mold. He has written many books. One of them is called Surviving Mold. I definitely recommend patients reading that book, picking it up. If you think this is something that you're dealing with, that's definitely a go-to. So before we jump into talking about mold, I want to talk a little bit about the history. So why is this so prevalent now? Why is this happening? Why are we seeing it more now? And in order to understand that, we got to go back to the 1970s. So in 1973, the United States decided to support Israel in the Yom Kippur War. And they supported Israel by providing them with weapons. During this time, the Arab countries, of course, this upset these Arab countries, and they decided to stop supplying the United States with oil. So there was a big shortage of oil in 1973. And for those of you that were around during that time, perhaps you recall these long lines in the gasoline stations, you know, a lot of these gas stations out of gas. So what happens with the country? Many of these construction companies and these home building companies decided that they were going to build homes and buildings, make them more energy efficient. And by doing that, they created buildings and structures that were more tightly sealed and that they would retain heat, which is great because during the winter time, you know, your home would be nice and warm and you wouldn't be using up as much energy. But this changed the dynamics of the indoor environment. As you're retaining heat, you're also retaining a lot of moisture. One of the things that mold needs the most in order to grow is moisture. Another thing is cellulose. The 1970s, another thing that was changed was some of the supplies that were used for construction, and they started implementing the use of a lot of drywall. And what drywalls are is pretty much cellulose. It's made out of paper. Paper comes from trees. Trees contain the cellulose, and so now we have cellulose with the combination of moisture, which is pretty much a perfect habitat for molds to thrive. In addition to that, something else that was added during that time was Venomil, which is a fungicide to the paint. Because we were having these issues with mold, they decided that that might be a good idea to add. However, it did help with some of the molds, but it did what most things do in nature, which is there's certain organisms that find a way and they become resistant to it. So many of these toxic molds that we're dealing with now are more toxic than they used to be. So going back to how we get this water damage in homes and how moisture can feed mold, we really have to look at the indoor environment carefully. We have to understand that sometimes there's leaks that we do not see in homes. There could be roof leaks, there could be sink leaks in your kitchen, in your bathroom, water damage from flooding. Many of these basements have a lot of moisture retention that can promote the growth of mold. So I know I've been mentioning mold a lot, and many of you probably are like, what really is mold? So mold itself has been around forever. It's been coexisting with us forever, and it's part of the fungi kingdom. In our environment, its purpose is to break things down. Again, like I said, its main source of food is cellulose. So it'll break down all these plant materials. When the leaves fall from the trees, it's what's breaking these leaves down, and it's useful for that purpose. But now that we've brought mold and we've changed the environment, these toxic molds can really affect our health. Many of you know that Restore Medicine, their main population of patients are Lyme patients. These Lyme patients come with many co-infections as well. So they're dealing with not only Lyme, but maybe Bartonella and Babesia. And these co-infections secrete toxins of their own. So they're already making these patients already susceptible. Their detoxification pathways are pretty much being used up. Their immune system is being worn out. And these Lyme patients tend to be very mold susceptible as well. So if you put them in an environment where there's high toxicities of mold, this mold will also play a role in their health. So another part of the treatment for many of these patients is addressing their mold, addressing the environment, helping them with detoxification. Now, mold does not only affect patients that have Lyme or any of these co-infections. It can be a family member that has no exposure or any of these illnesses. 25% of the population is susceptible to mold, and I'm going to go into more detail on what do I mean by susceptibility. But it means that 25% of the population, if exposed to mold, will have symptoms, will feel ill. So you don't have to have any other of these past diseases or illnesses in order to have any of these symptoms, or to be able to experience any of these symptoms when you walk into a house or a school or an environment that has these toxic molds in them. So what do you do? What do you do if you think that you have mold, or if you actually see mold in your home? One of the first things that we recommend is, well, why don't we get that tested? There's 3 main types of testing. One of them is very common. It's called an air sampling. And air samplings are done by many companies. I haven't listed any here. Hopefully I'll provide some of this information for everyone that's joining us live. So yeah, you can look up a mold repair company, and what they'll do is pretty much they'll come and they'll sample the air in the room, in any of the rooms that you want tested. They'll sample the air, and pretty much whatever they find in that sample, they'll let you know if it's a toxic mold, if they found some spores, or if they haven't found anything. So the issue with air sampling is the fact that air is constantly moving. It's constantly changing. It's very hard to just grab one sample and say that this is the sample that everyone's being exposed to. This is everything that's going on in the room. In order for someone to get accurate results with air testing, you would have to test multiple times a day. So every hour in the day, multiple days of the week, multiple weeks of the month, so that way you can get the most accurate results possible. And many companies will not do that, and it will just be a lot of work in order to get accurate tests. The next test is an ERMI test. The ERMI test is EPA certified. It tests for 36 different types of molds. It's a very accurate test. It's a test that you can do yourself at home. They'll send you the kit. Pretty much you attach the kit to a vacuum, and you go around your home and you suction different locations of the home, and you're pretty much trying to get as much dust and particles into that sample. You send that sample out, and they test it via PCR testing, which means they're looking for genetic and DNA fragments to be able to determine what type of molds there are. So again, that one tests for 36 different types, some toxic, some non-toxic types of molds. Following test, it's a HERTSME-2 test. Now, HERTSME-2 was developed by Dr. Shoemaker himself. It's pretty much taken out of the ERMI test. So it's also a PCR test. You also do the dust sampling. The only thing is that the HERTSME-2 test only tests for 5 different types of molds. Now, the 5 different types of molds that are tested by the HERTSME-2 test are very toxic molds, and these are the molds that are implicated and have the highest correlation with health problems. So these are the ones that you will see with the most susceptible population, with the most symptoms, presentations. The good thing about this test itself is that it also gives you a score. If the score of the home is less than 10, then it indicates that the building itself or the environment is safe for reoccupancy. So you can go back and live in the home. If it's above a 10, it's not safe, and you would have to remove yourself from the environment in order for your symptoms to get better or for you to actually recover from any type of exposure. So I'm just going to name a few of the molds that are tested. In the HERTS-Me2 test, there's testing for Aspergillus species, Stachybotrys, which is the black mold, Wallemia, Schutomium globosum. Now, these are the toxic molds that cause all these symptoms in people. They are known to cause damage to the cell membranes, damage to the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is pretty much a protective barrier that the brain has that doesn't allow chemicals or toxins to go in. If there's damage to the blood-brain barrier, then that's when you're going to see all these symptom presentations implicating that there's something going on with the nervous system or some damage to the nervous system. Okay, something else to keep in mind. If you see mold, just because it looks black doesn't mean it's the black toxic mold. Just because it looks white doesn't mean that it might not be toxic mold. Many species of Aspergillus are actually white, and they can be very toxic. So testing is very important. Don't assume that the mold is toxic. Don't assume that it's not toxic. Once you test, you can actually get the accurate results of what type of mold it is. And there's various colors. Molds can come in green, they can come in yellow, they can come in orange coloring. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about mold, and there's a condition called CIRS. It stands for Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome. So CIRS is a condition, it's pretty much a syndrome that occurs in a lot of people that are exposed to water damaged buildings. And these water damaged buildings, of course, because of the moisture and the cellulose, have a lot of mold growing in them. But not only is the mold affecting these patients, it can also be the inflammagens, which are particles of bacteria or mold particles. It can be VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds that are pretty much secreted from chemicals in the environment. Microbial volatile organic compounds are also secreted. These are the compounds that give you that smell to a room when you enter it and has some water damage. It smells kind of like a dirty sock or a musty smell, maybe a cheesy smell. Those are those types of volatile organic compounds. Of course, molds and bacteria will be affecting these patients as well. These patients are the ones that have a high level of symptom presentation, and they have a lot of susceptibility and difficult time detoxifying toxins, pretty much. Okay. I keep mentioning that 25% of the population has difficulty with mold and these mycotoxins and these neurotoxins in their bodies. So there's ways of testing for this. We test for the HLDR genes, and these are pretty much a different set of genes that'll let us know the person is susceptible for. There's 10 different combinations for these. And what this does is tell us that the people that have these molds are not, or these toxins are not able to get them out of their body. So let's think of these toxins as fat toxins. So these are toxins that are in our fat, and our body, in order to get them out, needs to make them water-soluble toxins. Problem is that 25% of the population has a big difficulty transforming those fat toxins into water toxins. And if you can't get those toxins out by elimination through, as a water toxin, then what happens is that these toxins continue to recirculate through your system. And what else happens is that the more you're exposed, the more toxins you build up. When I talk about these fat toxins, again, I'm not only talking about mold toxins. There's bacteria that secrete these toxins as well. So we have Lyme. Again, the major population for Restore Medicine is a Lyme population, but Lyme produces toxins as well. So does Babesia, so does Bartonella. And if we have difficulty eliminating these toxins, then throughout the years, all these toxins build up in these patients. And these are the toxins that stimulate the inflammatory responses of our body, that trigger all these different symptoms, that trigger the production of cytokines. And these patients are not getting better no matter how much you treat them, because they have this huge load of toxins in them that they haven't been able to eliminate. So making sure that these patients are detoxifying properly is really important, which is why it's so important to test, because if we can test, then we can more individualize their treatment depending on their needs. Okay, so what are some of the symptoms? So some of the symptoms are fatigue in the morning, fatigue all throughout the day, fatigue even after sleeping very well, muscle cramps, headaches that are very similar to migraine headaches, light sensitivity, red eyes, blurred vision, sinus problems. Keep this one in mind. We're going to come back to sinus problems, shortness of breath as well, diarrhea, joint pain, memory issues, focus, concentration issues, word recollection issues, decreased learning of new knowledge. We're going to come back to this one as well. Confusion, disorientation, skin sensitivity. Think about skin rashes as well there. Mood swings. This one definitely stands out. For those of you that have partners that perhaps are experiencing any type of mold sensitivity or toxicity, you'll notice that these patients, they'll walk into a room and their mood completely changes. They'll go outside, they're fine, they're happy. They'll walk to a certain building, to a certain restaurant, to a house, to someone's home. Their mood changes, they become irritable, they become kind of mean. So I'll show you in a second, and I'll explain in a second how all these toxins can affect your mood, because they actually affect your hormones as well. Sweat, especially at night, excessive thirst, increased urination, static shocks. We'll talk about these symptoms as well in the following slides. Vertigo and metallic taste in the mouth. Okay. So if you've experienced any of those symptoms, you feel like, wow, I have many of these symptoms that I'm experiencing. I'm noticing that my environment may be high in moisture. Perhaps I've seen mold in my home. What are some of the things that I can do, or how can I test myself, and then find a practitioner or find some more guidance in this journey? So one of the things you can do at home, and for those of you that are here today, you'll get to do this here with me. I've provided everyone with one of these. It's a VCS test, which is a visual contrast sensitivity test. The VCS test, it's a very simple test. You can do it in 5 minutes. You answer a series of questions, and then all you have to do is be able to distinguish different shades of gray going in different directions. For those of you joining us on live, Facebook Live, I'll attach the website where you can actually get this test done. It's a very affordable test. So why are we testing the eyes? Why are we looking for visual contrast sensitivity? So the optic nerve in the eye has some fibers that go along with it. They are on the superlateral side of the optic nerve, and these fibers are very susceptible to neurotoxins and toxins in the body. So if you have a high level of these neurotoxins, they're going to affect these fibers. And what are these fibers in charge of? They're in charge of how you see things in contrast and in shades. So when you fail this test, or when you don't get good scoring on this test, it lets us know that you have a buildup of toxins, of mycotoxins, neurotoxins, whichever toxins they are. And it's actually a very good test to start with, because this is a test that we can use to monitor you throughout your individualized treatment plan. So we can see if you're improving, how you're doing, if there's things that we need to implement, if there's different systems that we need to support in order for you to improve on your VCS testing. Now, let's say that you failed your VCS test, you decided to find a practitioner. What are the things these practitioners are looking for, and what tests are going to be run? So another test that we commonly do is called a Marcon's test. So Marcon stands for multiple antibiotic resistant coagulase negative staphylococci. So what this pretty much means is there's a staph infection going on in your sinuses, and the staph infection itself doesn't cause a lot of, discomfort or symptoms. You might have some sinus congestion, some postnasal drip. That's pretty much it for the sinus itself. But what these staph do in your sinuses is they create a biofilm that protect themselves from your immune system. So your immune system can't really get to them, so you can't really get rid of them that way. And they produce a toxin. Now this toxin is what we're worried about. They produce hemolysin, and what hemolysin does, it damages cell membranes, and it also cleaves a special hormone that is essential for our body, which is called melanocyte stimulating hormone, and it pretty much renders it inactive, so the hormone can no longer function the way that it should in our body. So in order for many patients to improve, not only do we have to support their detox and treating the mold, but we also have to treat the sinus infection that is presented on many of the mold patients. Okay. Another thing that's looked at is neuropeptides. So we have a list of different lab markers. The ones that I want to focus on is on 3 different neuropeptides today. The one that I just mentioned was melanocyte stimulating hormone. Just by the name of it, everyone automatically thinks, okay, that's our skin coloring, and that's its main function. Many times when these hormones are discovered, they're named after what they're discovered for, and later on we realize that they do so much more than that. So melanocyte stimulating hormone is actually very protective for your gut. When the levels of melanocyte stimulating hormones are low, actually triggers a leaky gut, so a lot of patients end up having leaky gut. It supports our sex hormones, our endocrine hormones. It also supports another hormone that we look at, which is ADH, and it's also anti-inflammatory, so it's a very, very important hormone in our body. The other hormone that we look at is ADH, just mentioned it. It's antidiuretic hormone, also produced in the brain. This hormone is what triggers your kidneys when you're dehydrated, that you need to retain water. So it lets them know, okay, kidneys, time to retain some water. We're really, really dehydrated. We need water. The problem is that with the Marcon's infection against the staph, decreasing the MSH, then the MSH is no longer able to support those healthy levels of ADH. So what these patients experience, as you saw in the symptoms before, was excessive thirst, irregularities in urination, so constant urination, dehydration, and also lightheadedness. And many of these symptoms patients experience during the nighttime, or that's when they start to notice them, because the constant urination doesn't allow them to sleep all throughout the night. The third hormone I wanted to mention is called VIP, which is vasoactive intestinal peptide. Now VIP is another very essential hormone, and this one is a bronchodilator and a vasodilator. It's also anti-inflammatory, and it helps regulate those cytokines throughout our body. One of the symptoms that these patients will experience is dyspnea on exertion. So they can be working out, they're constantly out of breath. They have to be taking deep breaths. They're not getting oxygen to the body parts that they need to, because it's not having the vasodilatory effect. Okay. So here we got to the part of where do you begin if you suspect that you have toxic mold. I recommend for everyone to do a mold testing in their home. So definitely do a ERMI or a HERTSMI-2 test. Figure out what type of mold you have. If you have a toxic mold at home, it's very essential for you to test for it. You can definitely do a VCS test. Again, I'm going to share the link, and for those here, you'll get to do that here. You can do a VCS test, test yourselves, share that with your family members, share that with your neighbors if you know someone's being exposed or experiencing any of these, the variety of symptoms. Acknowledge how you feel in different environments. I think it's very hard for people to pay attention to how they're feeling in relation to their environment. Everyone's always thinking that something internal, somebody said something, I feel this way because something happened. How about you just walked in someplace and you were exposed to something that didn't make you feel so good? Maybe that's something that needs to be addressed. Maybe, how about every time I go into the basement, I come back and I'm angry. For some strange reason, I'm picking fights with everyone. If you do find that you are in a moldy environment, a toxic mold environment, it's very important for you to remove yourself from that environment. Treatments can help mitigate and help all your symptoms and for you to feel better, but you won't really find full recovery if you're still exposed to the toxin. It's kind of like if you're trying to drain the sink but you have the faucet open. It just won't work fully. And then find a doctor that's knowledgeable in treating mold toxicity and conducting adequate laboratory tests. That's really important. We need to monitor your hormones. We need to be able to individualize the treatment. Everyone's very different. What works for one person might not work for the next. Okay, and then some of the treatment options. So definitely decrease or eliminate exposure. Number one, we just spoke about that. Something that is used by many of us practitioners is CSM, and that's pretty much short for cholestyramine. Cholestyramine is a binder. It's very good at binding out these toxins. Again, you're going to work with your practitioner when it comes to dosing this and taking this. Something else that's really well known is called VG spray. VG spray is used to treat the mark-ons or a sinus infection. Things that you can take holistically or on your own can be bentonite clay. Bentonite clay is great for binding toxins and getting things out. Activated charcoal. There's chlorella as well. There's a really good product that I like, and it's called GI Detox by Biobotanical Research. It's a combination of clay and charcoal. Support your detoxification pathways. That means make sure you're having a bowel movement every day. Make sure you're regularly having a bowel movement. If for any reason you're getting all these toxins and you're trying to bind them and getting them out of your system, but you're not having a regular bowel movement, they're just being reabsorbed, they're just sitting in your gut. Coffee enemas are great for that. Coffee enemas is a great way of stimulating your liver, so producing glutathione, which is one of our body's main antioxidants. And of course, don't forget to address your diet. You're already having issues with mold and all these other symptoms of inflammation. You want to have an anti-inflammatory diet. Have your fresh vegetables, fresh sources of fruits. Get your grass-fed beef if you eat any of the meats. Make sure you're consuming wild-caught fish. Everything as clean as you possibly can. And of course, always stay hydrated. So that is all that I have for everyone today. I'm going to set up the computer for those of you that are here so we can start the VCS testing. And for those of you that are joining me on Facebook Live, feel free to ask any questions and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.